What's going on, people? We are back with another episode of the Unsilent Church podcast, season 4. And our theme this season is called Serving the City. We want to be able to be people that love, that care, that love our city and serve it. So I'm privileged because we have a special guest in the building. But Pastor Ramon, you want to go ahead and introduce our guest?
Another friend, someone.
A legend. You got a lot of friends.
I know. I know a few people. Been around a lot. Been around a lot. I'm an old guy. But we're here with Carla Logan, who is the runner of Carlys.
Carlys.
Restaurants, one of the great Mediterranean restaurants in Phoenix, in Arizona. But one of the great restaurants in general that we have around on Roosevelt Row. And we wanted to just sort of hear from you, Carly, and about your perspective in terms of someone who's owned a business. And you're one of the first restaurants in Roosevelt Row. You and we were just talking about, I think Fates was the other one.
Yes.
But we should say, you're still here, right? And quick story, I just remember visiting your restaurant. It was pretty early on when you started. I stopped by. I was working at the church. I was on my way back home. It was midnight, and you were open. And I remember I felt like a need to stop there because I was I want you guys to survive. I was worried.
There wasn't much happening.
There was not much happening. It was dead. And I remember I came in, we chatted for a while. I used to do that a couple of times. And so your perseverance and just, hey, we're going to be here and continue on. And much has happened over the years. So it's been great.
So basically, you saved Carlys. That's what I heard.
I said, give me one of everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, Carly, I'd just love to hear your a little bit about how you ended up starting the restaurant, but especially too, just broader perspective of, I think you represent someone who thought not just what's good for me, but what's good for our community, even as someone who's trying to run a business.
Yeah. So we opened in 2005. My husband, then boyfriend, John, and I. And when I met...
Great name.
When John and I met, he was actually living at Thought Crime.
Okay.
Which was a notorious artist collective run by the recently passed Michael 23. Michael died on June 6th. But Michael and Joanna ran an incredible arts collective there and inspired a lot of people.
Were they at Paint Phoenix that way back a few years ago?
Probably. They ran the Miami Artworks.
Also, interesting.
And then they ran the Firehouse. But their philosophy was to give creative space for individuals who wanted to be artists and to let them have the ability to strive for their dreams and be free. So I met John. He was working there. I was living in the Garfield, and we were both participating a lot First Fridays and in the community on that level. John is a musician, and his band was playing a lot, and we were supporting a lot of artists that live in the community by attending their events. And we saw a huge opportunity and a void in the community at the time. Most of the commercial spaces were actually being rented by artists, and they were living and working in them. Not exactly legally at the time. I think that there was some issues with permitting that have since been worked out because of the diligent work of the community and the artist overlay to make that possible. So we worked with, when we came up with the idea, we wanted to have a casual eatery that supported the community, and we wanted to participate in the arts. So serve as a gallery, support live music. So we approached the owners of the then owners of the building, Tom and Lori Carmody, who have been amazing in supporting the arts in the community also. They were property owners that leased to people with vision and that were creative at affordable rates.
Nice.
So we leased from them, and that's how we got off the ground. So initially, it was myself and John and 2 friends that worked there.
Wow.
Right? And we leased 2 bays in the building. And then as we grew, the space grew.
Gotcha.
Now we have 4 bays in the building. So we still
Well, you operate the whole building now too, don't you?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. So we, through that, opportunity to have the property, have been able to extend our support for the arts onto the building.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of mural work on the building.
Oh yeah, some really really great stuff. Like
Thanks. Yeah.
that's really
We've
awesome.
worked with a lot of community organizations on murals too. We most recently did a mural with Councilwoman Anasari on, demonstrating the plight of women internationally and specifically in Iran right now. And then we also have worked with like a lot of kind of the staples in the community for years, Tato and Lalo, JB Snyder.
Yeah, they're so good. Yeah.
So, from the jump, the arts has been really significant and important. Why do you think the arts is such an important feature for a community to have? Like, why is art so?
So I think a lot of people don't really appreciate how much of an economic driver the arts are. So when you look
talk about it.
You look at communities that have underserved areas, and when the artists come in and have the ability to create change and make space where people want to be, and they feel connected to the community through the arts, you start to see change, right? You start to see change, and you start to see more jobs, you start to see more businesses, you start to see more living space. And that's, what organically happened in our community over the last 20 years. So the artists moved in, the creatives, and created spaces and beautiful street art and, space where people wanted to be. And I view, food also as like a great opportunity to bring people together to gather and to be together and share space and, be able to be together and support music, support the arts. Yeah.
Something about food that just brings people together. You know what I mean? Something about that.
It does. Yeah. And because we've been in business now for 18 years, we've had the opportunity to have guests who've actually like been on their first date at Carlys, and now they're married and they come in with their kids.
That's crazy.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's kind of cool to see that happen.
Yeah.
And over the years, we've employed so many people too that have gone on to do, great things, and great neighbors in the community like yourselves that are doing wonderful work.
You also too, I think it's just even your idea of thinking of your place as a place where people can easily come in and gather and connect. I just remember, the fact that you were open late.
Yeah.
You were willing to stay open late, even though there was like nothing happening.
Yeah.
Which is a sense of like that a city is more than just sort of 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think 20 years ago, even when we were talking about opening, I like wine. And I remember being like, there was like literally nowhere to get a good glass of wine unless you went to a hotel bar.
Yeah.
After 10,
Really?
after 10 p.m. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, there was very little in the community, right? And now you think of it, and there's probably
yeah.
like 30 places in our like radius. But when we got our liquor license, there had actually been a much more moratorium put on new liquor licenses in the community. Because the area was so challenged. So we had to appeal to the liquor board to get a liquor license. And we went around to the community to demonstrate that what we were going to be doing was going to be safe and creative and worthwhile. And
you've also been on the Roosevelt Row CDC board for a number of years, which I think just sort of shows your just general desire to build community and connection, to have a downtown that is, we often said, livable, walkable, creating space for people.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you think have been significant to help bring that along?
Sure. So I served with you. You were the president at the time that I was on the board, which was fantastic.
Was he a good president?
He was. He was great.
That's like when people ask like if a team captain was like a good teammate. It's like, was Chris Paul a good teammate?
I know.
Was he a good teammate?
He was.
John over here acting like the media.
Yeah. I think, at the time that I was on the board, and we had a lot of great, amazing people on the board, there was this idea that like we had a vision for what we wanted the community to become, and walkable, pedestrian, supporting the arts, retaining the creatives in the community, supporting small business. And there were obstacles, right? There were obstacles in the way that the zoning was written for the neighborhood, and there were obstacles for that to be achieved for people. So I think as an organization, we looked at that and said, like, what can we do to help be facilitators, right? And I think that there was value in having business owners and, people that were active in the community on the ground, like yourself with the church, that had more, I think, of a pulse on what needed to change in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And, I feel proud of the work that the organization did, because I think that we definitely brought it a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that just came to mind that I know you've cared a lot about, and I think this is maybe one of those goals we're still working on. I feel like you're one of the first people I used to hear talk often about, hey, this needs to be a place where like people who work in my restaurant could live, right? And that it's not just for, people who have a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that like you can easily sort of go in those directions, that like, what does it look like for those who are waitressing and do other things, who are not who are just starting out, or even an artist who's just starting out. How do we create space for them? Why is that something that's been so important to you?
So I think that like in order to have sustainable communities, you need to have diversity of economy, right?
Yeah.
And that like needs to happen. And when you lose your ability to house residents in your community that work there, you lose a lot.
Yeah. Communities are better when they're diverse like that.
Exactly.
Huh.
Yeah. And I think that this is a struggle in most American cities right now. And Phoenix, I think, was a little later to the game because it was always such a tremendously affordable place to live.
Yeah.
And I think that's what attracted a lot of creatives to this area, because you could do it, right? Like, I mean, for myself, starting a restaurant, 20 years ago was something that you could do without even actually having to loan money, right? Because it was like, it was attainable. Commercial rents were super affordable. Artists were able to live in commercial space and rent gallery space. People say like, what happened to all the galleries on Roosevelt? And I'm like, rents. Yeah. And it's and I actually don't blame property owners for that, because, it happens where the more, like, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but the more permits that are pulled, that's like how your property taxes go up. So I think I have a unique perspective because I've been on both sides of things.
Yeah.
But I think what needs to happen is to find the balance, right? So like what we do, right? Like, so we're a restaurant and we, obviously charge people to buy our product, but we also support the arts, right? So it's like when these condos come in and you build new, like what can those entities do to support? And I think that's something that we tried to do as an organization with Roosevelt Row, is to like talk to these people and say like, okay, you're coming into our community. What can you do to give a give back? And I really like hope that communities continue to push the city on that too, right? Because when new development needs variances for zoning, or they need a special use permit and they want the city to grant that, it's like, well, what can you do?
Has that been successful from your perspective?
So in my perspective, in certain areas, it's been successful. So like we've had a lot of success with getting developers to hire artists to incorporate work into their design. But there's been
like the Cambria and
totally right, and they've done a beautiful job of hiring local, and the artwork's fabulous, and you can feel that vibe that's Roosevelt Row. Where we need to do more work, and it's been more difficult, is getting market rate housing. And that's like when you go and you say, okay, like, can you offer 10 of your units in this huge, beautiful building to be like affordable, right? And that's more of a struggle, because then you hear, well, that doesn't pencil out.
Yeah.
But it's hard when that happens and development's given what's called a G-plot, when they are basically given a free pass on taxes and they don't do a greater give back. So, but what I would say like about all of this is that most people don't know that their level of engagement can have an impact.
Yeah, it's true.
So most people like don't find out about bad development until they're already like digging the hole. And at that point, it's hard to do anything. But if you're on the front end and you find out like when the permit hearing is, and you talk to your council people and you talk to your community, if you have concerns about a development, that's when you can have an impact, right? And that's when neighborhood organizations and churches and business owners and merchants associations can rally to like say, hey, you want to be part of our community? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
What are you going to be doing to engage with our community? Like, how are you becoming a good fit to be part of this community so it can continue to be successful and like with the mission?
Yeah.
There was I'm trying to think of a way. especially as we're talking about being like city servants or serving the city, I think sometimes I've been around a lot of conversations where people talk about and the importance of engaging or contacting city councilmen and women, other city leaders. And I wonder if there's I feel like for a lot of people that it feels overwhelming. They feel like it's community organizing or activism. And they're just like, I don't know if I'm built like that. And so I wonder if there are ways that people can share their opinion maybe closer to where they are, that doesn't feel like a far-reaching activist type of feel, that can still sort of move the needle towards getting on the front end of some of this development, so that in the end you actually get development that actually serves the city a little bit better versus what feels like just taking and doing something that doesn't make it really what we want.
Yeah. And, I think that like sending an email is incredibly impactful, right? And like on a political level, it really does have an impact. So I've been to these hearings where there are, going for use permits and stuff. And if there are, overwhelming numbers of letters, emails, comments from the community, that holds a lot of weight. The city does listen to that.
That's good.
Yeah.
So much.
You can be an armchair warrior with your email and your social media, right?
That's right. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so much behind that. I mean, the ethos behind that does require, you're asking developers to think of not just their development, but their community, and to adjust and to even, and so much of this, I think someone else alluded to just how, greed sometimes drives so much of this. We're asking people to maybe don't think first about how can I get every last dollar and cent, more like how can I be profitable on all those things, but in a way that actually helps continue to grow the community in the ways that already exist and promotes connection and community and all those other things. And it's just sort of what's good for me, even if it's at the detriment of others around me. And that's a more sacrificial mindset. It's a more of a others oriented mindset. And that's part of the process really of helping people think that way and finding those who do think that way.
Right. And when you think about like why developers want to be here, why people want to live here, it's because of what's been created
by the artists.
Through the arts. Yep. And also like this feeling, I think like, I grew up in Boston, right? Which is a very, Oakland and Boston, which are both very diverse cities. And like, I think when you come to downtown Phoenix and you're in Roosevelt, it feels urban, right? And it feels like walkable, and you have I think a great amount of diversity in the population that lives and works here. And I think that, when you see that and people are attracted to that, we don't want to do anything that's going to disrupt that growth. Right. So as a developer, people that are coming in need to be reminded, like this is intentional. Like this has been something that has been worked on, and the people that are attracted to this want to live in this space because they appreciate that. Right. Yeah. So if you want to come in and build fancy condos that are going to be very expensive, like what are you going to do to like give back to like the environment that has been created here?
Yeah.
That's helpful. That's a helpful way to kind of to think about it and look at. I'm sure some of those conversations though may be challenging to probably have, particularly with those developers that may think about it completely, different.
Sure. And I think that in the beginning, when we were still vastly vacant, right? Yeah. We had a lot of vacant lots in this community, and Roosevelt Row CDC and individuals in the community activated the lots in very creative ways. We had food festivals, we had parties, we had art installations on the vacant. Remember the textile installation that was like I can't remember the name of the artist. It was incredible. She wove she did a design for a giant blanket, and different individuals contributed pieces, and they covered the whole vacant lot. And then
I forgot about that.
Then the blankets were given to the homeless. It was incredible.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So there were these incredible projects that were like amazing, right? Yeah. And like really thoughtful. And so kind of in a way, everyone was like, oh, all these vacant lots are blight, right? This is the attitude that was happening at the city and stuff. And like, so when the developers came, everybody was like, yay,
Yeah.
no more vacant lots. But I was like a little sad because I kind of loved the space, right? Because the space gave opportunity. And when we talk about now what's lost, and when artists say like, why aren't you here? You know, like when people say to artists, why aren't you here anymore? The space is gone, right?
So, but I think this is where to your point, it's possible. It's not going to be the same, but if you're still oriented outside of yourself, particularly toward the artists, and give you opportunity using your platform to bless and serve others, there can still be great things happening. So, for example, like you walk into Carlys, on the walls is art, right? And so it's not the same as a gallery, and yet like there's great opportunity using what you have to continue to give space for artists to show what they do.
Right. Yeah. And I don't think that that's difficult to do.
Yeah.
You know, like as far as like, we feel blessed to have the art on the walls. Like I feel like it's a gift to have a new artist showing, and like, it's not hard to do that outreach and make that happen and facilitate.
Well, you got to think that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's very true.
Yeah. We've had now, I think it's the 3rd or 4th year running, the Maryville High School art students show every May.
So cool.
And it's so great for the kids to have that opportunity and to be down on a first Friday and see their work. And
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
One of the questions we ask our guests is, when you think of like churches in downtown communities, I think communities in general, but particularly downtown communities, what would you say to them in terms of how they can be oriented in ways that sort of help the community? Churches can sometimes be very insular and sort of just focused on what they do on Sunday mornings. But if you could sort of speak to churches, to pastors, what would you want to say to them in terms of how they might look outside of themselves and do things that really help the city?
Yeah. Well, I think that, you know, here you guys do a great job of engaging in the community, even your service and the community with being on, you know, the board at Roosevelt Row and reaching out. Like, I think that there's opportunities for probably other churches to be more engaged on a greater level, right? Because there's always opportunities to, you know, to help. And it's actually not as hard as people think, you know. And you don't need to have a great deal of time to make that work. Usually meetings are like once a month.
Just show up in meetings, community meetings.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what we did. We just sort of, when we came down here, figured out what meetings were happening and just be there.
Yeah, and I think also like something you do well is hosting community events. Like we had the APS substation meeting here, right? So facilitating greater conversations about things that are happening in the neighborhood is huge. Because churches have great space typically, right? So like being open to having that happen is super.
Yeah.
Well, Carly, thank you so much for blessing us with your presence and everything.
Let's plug Carly's restaurant.
I was just about to do that, man. I was just
Second Street in Roosevelt.
Thank you.
The chorizo quesadilla.
That's your
Excellent.
favorite, right?
I've been up and down the menu, so I'm going to help you out here. Chorizo quesadilla is great.
because you saved them.
You like the Santa Fe too, I think, if I recall.
Is that the? That's the roast beef one, right? Yeah, I've liked it. I'm more now.
You moved on.
Well, no, I'm moved on. I'm
He's like, my palate has developed over the years. Now that I'm a traveled man.
After 20 years, he's like, I'm on the next item. I'm moving down the
no,
list.
it's funny. I'm trying to be more healthy. So like I do the salmon one, the salmon salad.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's like
salmon salad is good.
asparagus.
I like the
Yeah.
salmon
It's
salad.
like a smoked salmon.
Yeah.
Like, so good.
With the asparagus and the
asparagus.
crushed
When I go there.
yeah.
Killer.
Yeah.
But then when I'm not feeling that way about being healthy, the killer thing for me, the thing I love the most, I'd recommend Best Anywhere. Grilled cheese and prosciutto with the tomato soup. It is so good.
It's a very popular,
It's the prosciutto that
in the grilled cheese.
it's the grilled cheese, but then the prosciutto that's in there, that's what kicks
Just
it up.
takes it to another
That's
level.
what takes it to the next level.
Just takes it
The
up.
tomato bisque is bisqued with oat milk.
No way. So it's non-dairy.
It cancels out the naughty.
Hey, talk to him, Carl. Talk to him.
idea.
Talk to him.
Yeah.
And then there's also, I haven't had this in a while. I need to go back to this one. The Viennese
Chicken.
Yeah.
That's
that one's
really
awesome.
good.
That one's good.
Yeah.
I helped you out there.
Thank you. Well,
I'll go
I
visit
appreciate
Carlys.
the plug.
Yes.
Yeah, and we
Absolutely.
have on Saturday nights live jazz.
Oh yes, that's right.
Okay.
We've been having that. Like when weather's good, it's jazz on the corner, and
Yeah.
then otherwise inside. And some of those jazz kids we've known for almost 20 years
Wow.
from
Oh, that's
being
awesome.
students at Arizona School for the Arts.
Oh, no way.
Nice.
Max Beckman, who is now I think 25,
Yeah.
started playing there when he was 16, and a bunch of the other kids too.
That's
So cool.
It's a journey, and they went on to, several of them become professional musicians.
Yeah.
It's really
That's awesome.
exciting.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks again. We appreciate you. Like we always say, love God, love people. We are out. Peace.